What's up guys, Aaron Miles here with On Tilt Gaming, bringing you my set review of the Time Spinning Witch. Now, I kind of wanted to switch up the formatting of my set reviews. I wanted to break it down into a tier list of Tier 1 cards, Tier 2 cards, Tier 3 cards, and then everything below that I would consider unplayable and not even really touch on, as to not waste my time on bad cards. Tier 1 would be things that are like kind of meta shaping, like that are going to get played in a lot of decks. Tier 2 would be things that like will get played in some decks or side decked, and then Tier 3 are cards that like have potential based on how the format shapes up, or depending on if other cards come out. Kind of a thing to watch out for list. But things with that got convoluted pretty quickly, where it's like, oh, is this story Tier 1 because it's good in the extra deck, or is it Tier 2 because it's good in the side deck of other decks, or maybe fringe playable in like Control or something. Things of that nature, and it got really complicated pretty quickly, which is one of the reasons that I didn't get out an Advent of the Demon King set review. I was trying out that format. Turned out it didn't really work super well. Things were kind of hard to judge on that basis, and then by the time that I got everything figured out, the set review would have been a little irrelevant time frame-wise. So, back to the original format this time. I was going to start this video off with the rulers to introduce the new mechanics, but once I kind of shot through that a few times, I realized that that wasn't really going to work, just because I need you to have a base knowledge of the set first. So I'm actually going to save all of the rulers for last. That way I can go back into the set and be like, well, Imul deals with inverse cards. Here are the relevant inverse cards. Keurig deals with battle arts. These are the battle arts. Shahrazad deals with stories. Here are the stories, kind of thing. And it makes a lot more sense to just kind of save those for the end. So I'll put a timestamp in the description if you just want to see my review of the rulers. So first I'm going to do the set, and then I'm going to do the rulers individually after I've done the entire set. So without further ado, here is my set review of the Time Spinning Witch. So first up we have the light cards. I'm going to see if I can get through this kind of quickly. The light should be pretty easy to get through relatively quickly. I'm going to summarize it up for you. I'm going to skip around a lot. Basically, every inverse resonator is garbage. Every card that deals with gems is garbage. And that really doesn't leave a lot in white. So we're going to skip over this card because it's garbage, as I just said, including the inverse side. And the big reason for that is that the inverse cards cost 0. And, you know, you're not really going to get an inverse more than once in a game. I'm going to go through, you know, I'm going to, like, show you these cards anyway because, you know, they do exist if you want to, like, go through it. Here we have the inverse spells. The inverse spells don't suck, so I will talk about those specifically. However, this one does kind of suck. Because 1 mana to cantrip, and does this not even cantrip? Okay, it does cantrip. For a second, I was pretty sure it did, and then I read it, and I didn't think it did. Cantripping isn't good. Like, you don't want to spend your mana to draw cards when you could just, like, play other cards. And then the inverse side of it, having your opponent discard a card and lose 400 life really isn't, like, super impactful, especially when, like, you already have, like, Thought Control, Scorn, Nameless Mist, and then you're paying 2 mana to do a non-targeted discard and make your opponent lose 400 life. Small life swings like this don't really matter that much, and, like, a 400 life gain is even more irrelevant. So I don't like that card that much. This card deals with gems. I'm going to skip over it. And the big reason that I'm skipping over things that have to deal with gems is because I don't fucking know anything about pandas. I'm a competitive player, and like, pandas haven't been good. They aren't good. I don't know anything. Like, I wouldn't know how a panda deck operates. Like, normally I would tell you, like, if these cards are good in a panda deck, but I don't know what panda decks even want to be doing at this point. I don't know how many of each gem they want. I don't know how many of different attribute gems they want. So really, I'm just going to be talking out of a place of ignorance, which is not something that I want to do. I want to focus more on the competitive side of things because that is something that I know a plethora about. Speaking of which, Flourishing Hope. This card's broken. You know, quick cast, target J resonator against this card cannot be destroyed until end of turn, then remove this card inverted from the game. That's a pretty powerful front side, especially if you're playing something like a Death and Taxes style deck. You want to protect, like, your Abdul, you're playing Lumia, you want to protect whatever you want to flicker that turn. You know, something like that. You want to protect your Mana Dork from a True Blade or a Stoning. Like, there's so much removal in the format right now that this card's really good. And then you get to the other side, and it is the best non-targeted removal in the set, you know, because Final Battle's not in the set, and that is currently the best non-targeted removal. And it's, 3 mana, instant speed. If this card wasn't quick cast, I don't think it'd be anywhere near as good. But it is quick cast, so it's very, very, very good. And you banish 2 resonators. Target player banishes 2 resonators. So your opponent could theoretically magic rebound this to you, but there's really not a point in that. Well, I mean, there's a big point in it, but I don't think that's gonna, you know, something you need to worry about going into like a Grand Prix or something like that. This card deals with gems. This card deals with gems. This card deals with gems. Deals with gems. Does this one deal with gems? Yeah, alright, gems, yeah. Karmic Retribution. Choose one. Destroy target resonator with no ability or destroy target non-magic zone entity you control. And draw a card. So the cantrip part of this is not super impactful. I really can't think of, like, any of your own cards that you want to be killing, at least off the top of my head. And then destroy target resonator with no ability. Obviously, this is made to be used in conjunction with the new final forfeit type card. However, I don't really, with so many like 1 card 2 mana removal in the format right now, I'm not a fan of like 2 mana 2 card removals. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to like pay a mana to blank something out and then pay a mana to like remove it. Like, it was fine when we had Bear Magic Space Time, because like Bear Magic had Remnant, you know, and Space Time drew a card and also had Remnant. So that was like that was more of a you know, you spend 2 cards but you get 2 resonators out of it over the course of the game, whereas this is like a one-on-one kind of thing. Like, you spend 2 cards, you get 1 resonator. You're sure you draw a card off both of them, but you know, I just don't think it's very good. This is an inverse card, another inverse card. Well, I mean, this one's not an inverse resonator, so let me talk about this card real quick, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this, mostly from like my friend group when it got spoiled. So we have Light Castle, Palace of Hope. Whenever you do Judgment of a card, invert this card. When it enters the field, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each resonator you control, and then the flip side of it enters and puts 4 -1/-1 counters on each resonator your opponent controls. I don't like this card at all. The front side is a worse green-white modal spell. Rendezvous of Wind and Light. This is the worst Rendezvous of Wind and Light. And like, I mean, sure, you know, it's only 2 mana. You could play 2 of these and get the same amount of counters as Rendezvous, and then you flip in your opponent's board, gets -8. But unless you're like setting up to get the flip off, like, this card isn't very like, this is the inverse cards that have to deal with flipping your ruler are very awkward, because you need to see them before you flip your ruler. And if you're playing a kind of deck like that, I think your ruler is a key part of your strategy and something that you need to flip by like probably turn like 5, 6, 7, something like that. Like, you're definitely not playing these in a deck that wants to flip the ruler on curve, something like IU. Actually, I lied. I'll get to that in a second. But I don't think this is playable in IU. Very important distinction. I just overall don't think this card's good. And then like a -40 your opponent's board. So fucking what, dude? This card I actually do think is playable in IU, and it's not because of the front side. Whenever a resonator you control is put into a graveyard from the field, you may pay 1. If you draw a card, this card of course is called Life-Stealing Altar. And I just kind of named the cards because I know a lot of people, like, these run long, so it's people probably play them in the background without watching the actual video, which is understandable. So Life-Stealing Altar, I don't think this card's good either. And a big reason for that is when you analyze cards, like, sure, this looks good on the surface. Anytime something dies, I get to pay a mana and draw a card. Cool, my things get killed all the time. I would love to pay some mana and draw some cards for it. I constantly find myself in a state where my cards are dying and I have open mana. A card like this will solve all my problems and maintain me card advantage in control matchups. In control matchups, sure, like, you could probably get away with side decking this card if, like, you're playing a resonator heavy deck and you think you're going to play against something like Mikage that currently has 16 2-mana removals. I'm talking about, of course, Lethal Arrow, Demon Flame in conjunction with the ping, and then the new Nullfire, and I don't remember the name of the black-white stoning. But in your average deck, obviously a very bad card. Well, maybe not obviously. And the reason for that is you have to think about how tempo works in Forcible. So you play this card like turn 1. Turn 2, you probably want to play like a 2-dropper. Like, your best case scenario is like play this turn 1, play a Tama turn 2, then like sack the Tama to kill something relevant on your opponent's board, and then also pay a mana to draw a card, and then like sure, your Tama drew you 2 cards. This card finally got value. The big thing is, like, this card doesn't get value until you've, you know, paid at least 1 mana into it. And at that point, it's a 2-mana draw card. You really need to get a lot of value out of this card, and I don't see that happening over like the course of a game, at least not in a relevant manner. And then the flip side, when it inverts, you put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your field rested. That's the only reason I think this would be playable in IU. It's kind of like a second special power medicine. Obviously, the stone comes in rested instead of unrested, not as good, but, you know, you'll take what you can get to play copies of cards. And then banish resonator, target resonator against -4/-4 and interfere. That's the least relevant ability on this card. That ability is fucking terrible. A lot of people posted that with like Demonic Dead, and it's like, sure, dude, if you want to pay like 1,000 life to kill my 6/6, like, you can go for it. And then, of course, you know, we saw things like the Evil Elemental Uprising kind of nullified Demonic Dead. But I don't think that was ever going to be a thing. So overall, I like this card in the respect of, like, maybe you play it in, like, weenie creature decks that have, like, in Lumia Command or something, you can play this against, like, control matchups. Let me just read the front side real quick to make sure that, yeah, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't be able to do this, like, multiple times over a turn. Like, if you get final battled, like, and 5 things die, pay 5 mana, draw 5 cards. This card deals with gems. This card is an inverse card. And I don't like the front side on it as much as I thought I would. You know, having your opponent's dudes enter their field rested is, like, honestly kind of whatever I've come to find. Miscalculation. quick cast, destroy target attacking Resonator. A very good card. This is actually better than Zero's Magic Light because 1, you don't have to be playing Zero, which is a ruler that does nothing, and 2, you can search this card off Gil Lapis, Usurper of Maddening Power, which is a card that is probably going to be coming up in a big way this upcoming format. You know, just kind of looking at all the spoilers we got, there's a lot of powerful black and white 1-drops entering the format, and I think Gil is going to be played in a wide spray of decks. This card deals with gems. This card, oh, it's an inverse card. No, it doesn't deal with gems, it's just an inverse card. This one deals with gems. And then we have Imol, which I will get to at the end. This card deals with gems. This is an inverse card. And then we have the final forfeit that's like arguably a better final forfeit because it draws a card, and then arguably not a better final forfeit because they can still gain abilities. But like obviously a really solid card. There's not much to say about it except that it's going to be really bad going into the format that we're currently in. It's not actually often like, so final forfeit was a really bad card for a really long time. It wasn't until Prisia became a big thing and we had something like it needed to specifically be able to counter something like that. Like Prisia entering the meta in a big way made final forfeit good. But the card was out for a long, long time, and it wasn't good. And I think we're going to see the same thing with Separation of Fates. Like, there's nothing like Prisia in the format, except arguably IU. Like, maybe you side this in against the IU matchup, but then you have to be careful about when you do it, because they can still gain abilities for the rest of the turn. So, like, if they, you know, pitch a soul and attack, and you go, okay, well, now you're 10-10 on the ground, and then they go, okay, well, like, discard another soul after this resolves, and, like, that's something they can do. So that's just, you need to be a little more careful when you play it. This card deals with gems. This card deals with gems. This card is just, like, a worse final forfeit. I don't think anybody really needs an explanation on the fact that, like, a final forfeit on a body's not good. And then we get into the red cards at this. Alright, so now we're on to the red spoilers of the set, and we're going to start it off with Ancient Impact. This card cannot be cancelled if your J-Ruler is the Dusk Girl or Scarlet the Crimson Beast. This card deals 2,000 damage to target player or J-Resonator. I actually like the idea of like a Scarlet control deck a lot, where like you don't really worry about getting null, and you just kind of like play this card as a win condition because it can't be cancelled, and that's obviously very good. And it can't be hit by Thought Control, which is pretty relevant. The main worry of running a deck like that would be like obviously Nameless Mist, like if your opponent just like Rachel's this away from you, then like you're kind of fucked, and like you probably don't want to be running like 3 or 4 copies of this card, because you know it'll be hard to get there. But you know, it's something that would be probably cool in theory, and like maybe I'll fuck around with it, but we'll see. Overall, I like this card a lot. I think it's a little bit overcosted. Like 8 mana is like a fuck ton, considering that you cap out at 10 for the most part. But Apprentice Martial Artist. Whenever this card enters the field, remove 3 strength counters from your J-Ruler. If you don't, this card enters the field rested. I think that like this card's honestly like a little bit bad, because like that first ability shouldn't exist, because like I don't give a shit if the enters the field rested, it doesn't have swiftness. The second part is that removing the strength counters from your J-Ruler is mandatory. The only way, so like you don't have a choice in the matter. It's the reason that line is there is like if he enters the field and your J-Ruler has 2 strength counters, then you don't remove any and he enters the field rested. But if you have 10, you're down to 7, homie, and there's nothing you can do about that. And then he's got Fire Breathing. But not a fan of this card, especially compared to the other 2 drops that we got in the set. And then we have Combat Loving Dragonoid. Whenever this card attacks, it gains 400 attack until end of turn. Whenever a Resonator your opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the field, put 2 strength counters on your J-Ruler. Don't like this card a lot. I mean, sure, it's like an 8-12 when it's attacking. But for 4 mana, that's like a little bit weak, and then, you know, if your opponent's dudes die, then you gotta put strength counters on your J-Ruler, but I really don't think that, like, Keurig is really lacking for strength counter generation, so I'm not a fan. And it's not a dragon, so, like, what's the point? And this thing's like a demon that searches a dinosaur, Dino Calling Demon, makes sense, you know, it's aptly named, good job Force of Will, but overall, pretty bad card. Dinosaurs aren't super relevant, at least that I can see from, like, my initial thoughts. Like, I might change that, because I do really like a couple of the dinosaur cards, but I don't even think I would play something like this, especially when, like, Dinosaur Calling exists. And that's only 1 mana. Then Dino Rider is an example of a pretty good dinosaur. 6 mana, 14/14, pretty fucking expensive. Although there are ways to cheat it in. And then when it enters the field, excuse me. When it enters the field, it deals 600 damage to each other Resonator. And then whenever a Resonator is dealt damage by this card, it's put into the field this turn, or put into the graveyard this turn. This guy gains Swiftness. So he comes in, and if he wipes anything small, he gets Swiftness. So I think, like, most of the time he's probably going to have Swiftness. You know, assuming we're still in, like, a Sacred Elf-centric meta like we are right now. So I think that would be kind of interesting. Personally, I don't think you're going to see any like playing this card at a GP, but maybe at locals or something. Domesticated Dragon. This card's not that good. You know, it's got like Fire Breathing if you have no cards in hand, but it's like a 5 mana 10/12. Y'all remember 12/12 flyers, right? Yeah, this card's a 6 mana 12/12 flyer, and vanilla in this one. Dragon Aura as an additional cost to play this card, remove 2 strength counters, and then gain 10. As I said, I don't think you're really lacking for strength counter generation, and I meant that more in like an organic way, not like, oh, you don't have to play this 4/12 to get strength counters because you play 4 Dragon Aura. That's not what I meant. I mean, like, it kind of happens organically. Like, you'll see when I get to the good cards of the set. This is not one of them. I'm not, like, this is just a wall of text. All you need to know is this card isn't good. It's called Ferocious Attack, and it's bad. Fictitious Fire. This is a strictly better Callous Blaze. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. This card is a vanilla thing. This is probably a draft card. Flying Dragon of Mount Hull. This is one of the good cards. It's a 2-mana 9/7 at the cost of a strength counter. That's pretty good. And 700 defense is, you know, out of the range of a few things. It still dies to, like, True Blade. It still dies to Burn to Cinders and things of that nature. But I actually don't think Burn to Cinders is really going to be seeing a lot of play. Red seems like kind of a weak color. Maybe it's like a good splash color, but double red is kind of hard to get to in like a timely fashion if you're really worried about Scarlet and you're like, oh, it's fine, I'll play 4 redstones and I'll play Burn to Cinders. It's actually very difficult for you to get to that mana quickly. But a little bit beside the point of the Flying Dragon of Mount Hull, I like this card a lot. I think Keurig is going to need to take an aggressive route based on everything that we've seen from him so far, and I think this card really, like a 9/7 flyer, you're pretty much guaranteed to take that on turn 3, especially like in conjunction with Pumpkin Pig, which is probably my favorite card from the set. Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm. I kind of like this card because it's more or less a Thunder. It just deals 100 less to face. But it's a battle art, which is relevant for Keurig. And then if your opponent is randomly playing a dragon, you can just pop that bitch too. And then, you know, if you want to remove 5 strength counters, you can Thunder your opponent's face and their Resonator, which is pretty cool. Overall, not a huge fan of this card. Like, I think... obviously, like, it's not really playable in anything that isn't Keurig, is what I mean when I say I don't really like this card, because, like, Lightning Strike already exists if you want to play, like, a red deck. So this is, like, only relevant for Keurig, but I don't hate it. Like, it's pretty cool. Hero's Bracelet, I don't like this card at all, which includes Howell's Martial Arts Tournament. This thing's a wall of text, it's kind of difficult to understand. Basically, don't play it. That was easy. Hollow Flame Shadow, not good. Like... 1 mana cards with Swiftness only matter if you play them turn 1. And I'm not going to have Null turn 1. I fucking hope I don't have Null turn 1. Home of the Ultra Dragon. This card's pretty cool. Whenever a 2-drop or lower enters the field, deal 600 damage to it. This would have been like really helpful coming out of the format that we were in, especially if you're playing, especially if you wanted to play something like Mikage. Like, this just destroys your opponent's board. Everybody was playing 2-drops or less. That's the reason True Blade was so good. So it'll be interesting to see how this card shapes up in the meta. Overall, I like it. I don't think it's like meta defining at all. It's kind of like Realm of the Dragon King was, where like it's cool. It's not very playable, to be honest, but we'll see. Keurig I will get to at the end with the other rulers. Mad Scarlosodon. I don't know dinosaur names. I don't know how to pronounce anything. I barely speak English. So it's just a 10/10, and when it enters the field, you discard a card, and then if you have no cards in hand, it gains Precision. If it, you know, had Swiftness, if you have no cards in hand, like, sure, we can talk about it, but Precision's not a relevant symbol skill. I don't like that card at all. This is just like a vanilla 8/8 with Swiftness. It's not good. Pile Ally. See, I don't know how to pronounce things. I don't speak no English good. The Flaming Fist. I like this card a lot. So what you need to know is this, summarizing here. He's a 2-mana 9/9 as long as you have removed 2 strength counters from your ruler that turn. And then for 3 extra mana on Awakening, you can pull Pumpkin Pig into play. And like 2-mana 9/9s are big. Like, he doesn't have Swiftness, but like he's sticky. And he puts strength counters on your J ruler when on your J ruler when he comes in. So like he already pays for himself, and he just dodges removal pretty well. Sure, he still dies to like 2 instances of a True Blade, but like I'm not gonna judge a 2-drop for dying to 2 instances of a True Blade. I will judge them for dying to 1 instance of it, which he does not because he has the evasion of pumping himself up to a 7/7 in response to it. So it's a pretty good card. I like it a lot. Definitely deserves its super rare spot as far as flavor goes. And then we have Pumpkin Pig. Piggy Howell's great hero pig. So in this card, field, put 2 strength counters on your J ruler. And then you can remove 2 to either give something Swiftness or Flying. I will call this card Pumpkin Pig until the end of time. Because that's what he is. He's a Pumpkin Witch. And like, nobody thought Pumpkin Witch was good when it came out. And like, maybe people aren't I think people are just looking at this in the context of Keurig and going like, okay, yeah, whatever, I don't really want to play Keurig, I don't really care about this. All the things in red have Swiftness anyway, but like, you gotta look at it like we did with Pumpkin Witch way back in Alice's World days. Like, you gotta build a Keurig combo deck with Pumpkin Pig. That shit might take me a while to build, but it's gonna happen. Like, it might not be ready for Montreal, but like, see me in like Toronto playing Pumpkin Pig OTK. I'm gonna figure this shit out. But even like if you're not going for a combo deck, I still think this is a really powerful card. Because he puts 2 strength counters on your J-Ruler when he comes in, he basically is a 5/7 with swiftness, which we're kind of lacking on like good swiftness resonators right now. The only one I can really think of off the top of my head is Sylvia, and then like you have Freyla, kinda. Freyla's like conditional swiftness, but like Pumpkin Pig being able to give other things swiftness, like this is, it's like Prisia on a stick, but instead of calling stones, you have to expend strength counters, which is obviously more balanced, better for the game. So I don't think it's a bad card just because it's a more balanced Prisia. I think that you really can't compare it in that sense. Like, you can't be like, oh, this card's bad because, like, Prisia did it better. Prisia got banned. Like, obviously that was a little bit too good. We dial it back a bit. We'll see how Pumpkin Pig does. I'm a big fan. Piggy's Child, not a big fan. This card sucks. It's 1 mana 2/4. It can't be attacked as long as you have Piggy Hole's Great Hero Pig. Then you can tap to give another beast +2/+2. The problem with like that kind of support is that like Keurig is very spread out between beasts, dragons, and dragonoids, and like there's no like solidified support for all 3 of them. Like his God's Art gets dragons. Like there's a bunch of like dragonoid cards for him. Now we're throwing beasts in the equation. I don't like it. It's confusing. It's too much. This is a vanilla dude. He's not good. Scarlet's Vision. This is another wall of text. It's not good. Selection, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. If you discarded a beast this way, put 5 strength counters on your J-Ruler. Pretty good for reanimator strategies, you know? Like, it's a Guinevere on a spell, which is, like, kind of fine. Guinevere was pretty broken, and we don't have her anymore, and I don't even know if, like, she would be ideal in a True Blade format. So, you know, like, this is the kind of card that, like, sets up combo decks down the line. Maybe not now, maybe not, like, next set, maybe not the set after that, maybe not until, like, whatever is the next cluster's 4th set comes out. But this card will, like, pop up in some way. Just like that's the nature of cards like this. Okay, this isn't good. I'm sorry, I like spaced out reading it, trying to figure out. I didn't like recognize the card. This, you know, 4 mana, not instant speed chant is not good, and then it's like it's just a Hellflame, but it deals the damage to 2 resonators for 3 additional mana and not being chant speed. And I'm just not a fan. I don't think that's what Keyric's looking to do. I think Keyric's got enough like efficient removal that you don't need to play something like that. I don't like this card at all. Ultra Dragon Flame Sphere, like what is the point? So you can play it for free if you rest an Ultra Dragon Shooting Star, and then it kills your Ultra Dragon Shooting Star. What was the point of that? I didn't like, you're walking into Severing Winds if you want to do it all the same turn, and like the dragon doesn't have swiftness, so like you might as well do it all the same turn. I don't know, man. This card fucking blows, and I'm mad about it. Ultra Dragon Shooting Star. This card does not blow. This card is very good. 3 red mana, 10/10, flyer, barrier blue-black, that's a lot. And then whenever a resonator enters the field your opponent controls without being played from your opponent's hand, he blasts it for 2,000. He opens up his mouth like the sky. This card is so cool, dude. Thematically, art-wise, its abilities, like I fucking love this card. And it's a Dragon Guardian, like it's great. The name is cool, the abilities are cool. It's everything I wanted. Like, Dawn of the Earth was, like, your answer to things, like, previously, where it's like, oh, man, like, Fair's a bitch. I have to, like, you know, dawn things. Oh, Lumia, like, exists. I have to dawn their things when they flicker. But nah, Ultra Dragon Shooting Star, like, sees them leave the field and come back, and he's like, no, I'm not standing for it. And he just blasts them. Fucking love it. And then when he dies, you have to discard a card, which is, you know, it's pretty understandable given, like, the undercosted nature of this card. It's got a 0 mana ability that's very relevant. It's got barrier from 2 colors, and on a like it's a 10/10 flyer for 3 mana. Generally, 3 mana is your baseline for like an 8/8 vanilla that like no symbol skills, and instead now you've got one with flying. So yeah, I don't know. I just like this card a lot. I think it's really cool, and I think it'll see play even in things like. Don't get pigeonholed into thinking that this is a Keurig card, because this card does not interact with strength counters in any way. You can play this thing in anything. Like, if you want to play, like, a Jund control deck, I don't think this is a necessarily bad win condition. Like, it gets hit by Thought Control, which is a little annoying, but, like, if you can curve out into this, holy shit, you're in a good spot. Especially with, like, all the stonings are black. Like, having barrier blue-black is pretty relevant. So I'm looking forward to seeing that card get played. Alright, so first up, we have the blue spoilers from the set. As a player, I've made it publicly stated multiple times on a lot of occasions that I'm not a big fan of blue and Forceful. Never have been, and this set really didn't change my mind. And a big reason for that is, one, I don't like Shayla. I don't think she's a good card. I don't like her concept. The other problem is that Shayla players did get a little shafted with the rules, meaning that if it is thunderstorming, it is not raining. They are 2 separate weather types. You can only have 1 weather type at a time, and a lot of your cards deal with rain and thunder, like Mega Thunderfish, not Giga Thunderfish, but Mega Thunderfish, the card from Ancient Knights, deals with Rain and Thunderstorm on the same card, and now the card's a little bit worse for that. It's like, alright, yeah, it has Swiftness if it's Thunderstorming, but then if it dies that turn, I only return a creature to your hand instead of the top of your deck because it's not raining, it's just Thunderstorming. And it's actually pretty difficult to change it from Thunderstorm back to Rain, if that's what you want to be doing, like all in the same turn. Lightning Cave can do it, because it says tap, make the weather rain, and then tap, if the weather is rain, make it thunderstorm, but if the weather is thunderstorm, then it'll overwrite it and make it rain again. But there's, like, you don't want to be playing, like, the cantrip that says make it rain. That's not a good card. That's what Shayla's for. So anyway, the blue spoiler shouldn't take me too long, is essentially what I'm trying to get at here. So first off, we have Biribiri Ball. And it's a 1-mana quick cast, rest target Resonator, which is obviously not very good. It doesn't even cantrip, which you would expect something like that to do, like Shining Strike did. And then if the weather is Thunderstorm, then this card deals damage to the Resonator equal to its attack. So this is actually a pretty good card if you're running a Thunderstorm deck, because then you basically have a 1-mana kill spell on most bigger Resonators, like low drop Resonators, like Sacred Elf, Melfi, Vingulf 3 Illumia, you know, things like that. There's a couple like 5/7 to 4/7 stat lines on 2 drops, but you know, for the most part, once you get into the higher stat lines, or the higher mana costs, like 3 drops are 8/8s and 4 drops are 10/10s, and this will kill most things. But the problem is it has to be Thunderstorming, which means you're probably playing Shayla, which means you're probably not playing a super competitive deck, but you know, I've been wrong before, but not often. I don't think I'm wrong about this one. This card I almost liked, Dr. Mermaid. You can tap it to, the important one is recover your ruler if it's water. And that's because, like, this is a cool flute card. This is a cool, potentially, Ayu card, because Ayu did play, you know, it plays Flute's Water Dragon, it plays Ho-Oh Pig. I do think 2 mana might be a little bit too much for Ayu, though. Because generally, like, you want to play Ho-Oh Pig and then, like, flip in the same turn. And, like, 2 mana, this thing doesn't have swiftness, so it can't do it all in the same turn. But, you know, obviously, like, this is a pretty good flute card. It doesn't even really have to deal with Shayla. Although I think Shayla is, like, tap, add the rain cantrip to your hand, but I don't think you want to be playing that card. So, not too much looking good for Dr. Mermaid there. Giant Rabbit. When it's current to field, like, this isn't a good card. It costs 5 mana, it's a 10/10, and then top deck's a Resonator. It's not super impactful for 5 mana. This is pretty impactful for 5 mana. Giga Thunderfish. Now this is a fucking bomb. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what blue needs. Like, we need more cards like this. This is a step in the right direction for blue. It needs more things like this. So whenever it attacks, it deals 200 damage to each J Resonator your opponent controls. And then whenever it deals damage to a J Resonator, you rest that J Resonator, and it doesn't recover for as long as Giga Thunderfish is on the field. And then when it enters the field, if it's Thunderstorming, then you get a Searcher's deck for a Mega Thunderfish and a Thunderfish and put them into your field. And Mega Thunderfish, if it's Thunderstorming, which it will be if this card comes into play, is a 10/10 with Swiftness. So you, for 5 mana, if it's Thunderstorming, you will get a 12/12 that can attack and tap down your opponent's board, a 10/10 with Swiftness that'll bounce a creature to your opponent's hand at worst, and then I think Thunderfish, like, draws a card if it's raining when it dies, which is not bad. The problem, you know, the trick is if they, like, well, it'll probably be raining on the next turn. Anyway, point I'm getting at, Giga Thunderfish, a good step in the right direction, but definitely not the kind of bomb that can, like, solo carry blue through the format. You know, Captain Hook couldn't even do that. He was just splashed into a lot of decks, but I think we're still pretty far off of seeing, like, a blue base Force of Will deck topping a Grand Prix. We have Keys' Corkscrew, which searches your deck for a card named Keys the Wise Dolphin or Keys the Electric Dolphin and puts it into your field, and then gives it swiftness and precision until end of turn, and then at the end of the turn returns it to its hand, which has a little bit of a combo with one of the new Keys that I believe cannot be returned to your hand. But overall, like, they're not, like, they're cute, but, like, this is like a 10/10, and then it'll have swiftness if you pull it out with that card, and it can't be blocked if it's Thunderstorm. So, like, that's a cool 3 mana, deal 1,000 to your opponent, and then, like, put this guy back in your hand, but, like, then you have to cast this guy for 4 mana, and he doesn't have swiftness again, and, like, it's kind of mediocre. And then Lightning Cave is a pretty good card, mostly because of how splashable it is. Like, this is a pretty key card for the Thunderstorm mechanic. Like, this is the main way that you're going to be able to change it from Rain to Thunderstorm while you're on your ruler side for Shayla, while you're building up those Thunderstorm Cannos for your God's Art, things like that to make it Thunderstorm later. And then just non-water J Resonators lose and kind of gain swiftness and flying is actually a pretty impactful ability on a 1-mana addition. You know, you might see this not played in blue decks. People might just try to butterfly into it, kind of like they do with Shackles of Ice, or they used to do with Barrier of Shadows. And, like, this actually has a pretty big Wanderer implication where blue is a little bit stronger. You have things like Glimpse of Kagi, a Cheshire Cat, Captain Hook, you know, a couple of those cards, and, like, those decks might struggle with aggro. And then Lightning Cave is almost like a pseudo Robe of the Fire Rat. It's a floodgate. It's been a while since we saw a good floodgate in Force of Will. So I'm pretty excited for Lightning Cave. Not so much for the Thunderstorm and Rain aspect of it, but more so for that first ability. I think this is actually a pretty strong card. Maybe not in New Frontiers, but I do think it has Wanderer impact, and you guys know that I love Wanderer as a player. I'm really excited for the upcoming Rhode Island GP. Can't wait to see how that goes, and I'll be testing with that card a little bit. Lightning Dragon, like, sure, he's overstated. Like, it has been so long since we saw a 4-mana 15/15. Mephistopheles is a great place in my heart, where Mephistopheles, like, had flying and precision and dealt damage to your opponent when he was targeted. This guy just can't attack unless it's thunderstorming, and he has flying. That's nothing. That's not a thing. Lightning Phantom, he can make it rain until end of turn, and then you can tap blue and then it thunderstorms until end of turn, but only if it's raining. The problem is there's not a lot of ways to make it thunderstorm if it wasn't already raining beforehand, and that's the reason that these cards are kind of pigeonholed into Shayla. Maybe Lightning Cave will surpass that in a different kind of blue ruler, but we'll see. For the most part, I'm just going to try to go through these thunderstorm cards a little bit quickly if I'm not impressed by them. Lightning Shield I think is actually pretty good. Quick cast, dude gets +0/+8, and Barrier, which is, will help a blocker survive. Like, if you're chump blocking with something and they try to kill it to, like, just get in the damage at you, then this will probably not only make it survive the kill spell, but also the attack, most likely. His 800 defense is nothing to sneeze at. And then it reflects damage back at the Resonator if, the weather is Thunderstorm, which is a pretty decent ability. It'll usually kill anything that you're trying to block. However, I'm not sure. Like, unless you're doing this in response to a kill spell, this is basically just a kill spell. Which, like, isn't bad. Blue doesn't have a lot of those, but it's a situational kill spell, whereas now we have a couple of stoning to deaths in the format, so not as cool as it would have been. But, like, obviously it's very good if you can block something and then bait out a stoning and then play this card. Like, it's a great card then, but that's a pretty specific scenario that I don't think you're going to run into often enough to make this card super impactful in your deck. This card, like, I feel like this is a card that would be cool in Magic, where it's like, oh, this guy's big if I don't have anything, and that's cool for, like, control, but, like, not in Force Will, dude. This thing's so fucking vulnerable. There's so much removal in Force right now. It's insane. This thing, like, just enters your field and looks at the top card of your deck, which is, like, irrelevant. Like, it might as well just be 3 mana, like, draw a card. I don't know. This thing has Mobilize, so we're just not going to read it. This card's pretty, this card's pretty cool. Athena, Thundercloud, Wizard. If spell or ability you control would change the player's weather changes to Thunderstorm instead. This kind of surpasses the, like, it has to be raining first and then you can make it Thunderstorm, and this just kind of skips it straight to Thunderstorm, although you still have to have a rain effect. It's a little awkward. There's nothing just, like, straight out that makes it Thunderstorm, except Shayla. But, Mermaid Researcher, I'm not even gonna fucking talk about that one. Like, it's a race-based card, and Force Will's races are all over the place. This card's kind of cool. It's Raiju. It's a 1-mana 6/6 with Swiftness if it's Thunderstorming. The problem is that 1-mana 6/6s with Swiftness, and a lot of people have been talking about these since the deal 200 damage to yourself to tap for Redstone came out. 1-mana 6/6s with Swiftness are really, really good turn 1, and they're not that great pretty much any turn past that. Like, turn 2, they're still good. Like, turn 1, they're amazing. Turn 2, they're good. They're great if you can jam down 2 of them on turn 2, but you probably would have just played 1 turn 1 then, you know what I mean? So, like, anything past turn 2, and these cards really start to kind of fall off, because they are pretty much, I think every 1-mana 6/6 is vanilla outside of the Swiftness. So, past turn 3, those things really start to lose their value, which sucks. Things like Lancelot, it's like 2-mana 6/6s with Swiftness tend to, like, have a relevant ability that makes them playable past turn 3, but not so much the 1-mana ones, which is expected. Like, it's kind of like Wall of Wind. It's like, how hard are you playing for the early game? Will you accept that you will see some dead cards past the early game? I don't think, like, Shayla Thunderstorm decks really care about cards like this. Rebellious Soul, Ayu, for the most part, this card's just another soul for Ayu. It'll steal a Sacred Elf every now and then. The J-Ruler part seems to be mostly irrelevant, because it doesn't trigger enter abilities. So, Sea Serpent, this card cannot be returned to its owner's hand. Maybe this is a card I was thinking of. Maybe all the keys is returned to their hand, and this is what I was thinking of. Shayla, I will get to at the end. I don't know why this website is taking so long. Shayla's Adventure. I actually do like this card, kind of. It's 3-mana, draw 2 cards, but then you also get to put an addition into play. And 2-mana additions that I can think of off the top of my head are like Lightning Cave, Wind Secluded Refuge, Wetlands, things that, like, will get immediate value. So it's pretty cool to be able to draw cards. And then essentially pay 2-mana addition for 1 mana, because 2-mana draw 2 is like the standard in Force Will. So having a 3-mana draw 2 and then put in a 2-drop addition could harness some value, but, like, they're not. you know, most of the time, like, it'd be easier to just play the 2-mana addition and just cut this card from your deck entirely, so not super impressive. Shayla's Battle. Return target resonator with your opponent controls with 1,000 attack or more to its owner's hand if you do draw 2 cards. This card is a phenomenal side deck card. I don't think it'll be main decked because I really actually don't see the format being run by big resonators, but like there are, like Wanderer is run by big resonators, and this will have a huge impact there. But in New Frontiers, probably not so much. I think we're going into more of a control type format. Silent Mermaid, this is probably my favorite blue card from the set. As long as the weather is thunderstorm, your opponent cannot play cards during your turn. Unfortunately, like in testing, this thing just fell flat a lot because it's very difficult to make it instantly thunderstorm on your turn. So I can respond to you making it thunderstorm by like killing this card, and then I'm free to play cards. Because a 2-mana 6/6 is pretty vulnerable. You know, it's a cool concept, but I don't think it's really going to work out too well. Small Whale, it's a 1-mana 3/3 that can get a bigger butt. It's useless. Soaked Panda. It's a 5/5 if it's raining, and it's a 7/5 if it's thunderstorming. But once I touched on aggressive 1-drops in blue a little bit earlier. Thundercall cantrips the thunderstorm if the weather is rain, and then draws a card. Thunderwave I also like a lot. You get to return a non-J roller entity to its owner's hand, non-magic zone non-J roller entity, and then draw 2 cards if the weather is thunderstorm. So like 2-mana bounce a guy to hand isn't bad. I'd prefer top of deck. Like, I don't think there's any just straight return something to top of deck for 2 mana. It's usually conditional, something like detachment that, you know, it has to be attacking. But if you can get it to thunderstorm and then, like, get tempo like this and then draw cards on quick cast, I think that's insane. This is the only card that, like, makes Shayla any kind of, or, like, thunderstorm mechanic as a whole anywhere near playable in my head, but I think it's just a little bit too weak. Thunderstorm, just quick cast, return all resonators to their owner's hands, and then if it's thunderstorming, put them on the bottom of their deck. It's a 5-mana board wipe. We have plenty of 5-mana board wipes. None of them are quick cast, but I don't think that actually makes a whole lot of a difference here. I think Eternal Recurrence is still the kind of route that you would want to be taking with something like that. Treachery, I also don't like. It's like cool as a board clear type thing, but I really don't think blue is in the swarm game right now and then like clear out your opponent's board with your attackers. I think it'd rather just handle the threats as they come, bouncing them. And I don't know. I just feel like this is a little counterintuitive. Like Lumia command decks seem to be more the flavor of this because they can't run things like Final Battle because they're banned. But I don't think this is like a good final. I don't think like you look at your banned deck and go, man, I really wish I could run Final Battle. I guess I'm gonna run Treachery instead. You know. I don't think that's how the game works out. Witch's Shadow, it's just a worse card. Use Moonbeam Butterfly. There are like no good were-rabbits in standard. That's a race thing I'm talking about. Forcewell has such weird races. And then we get into the win spoilers. Alright, now we get into the good stuff in the set. My absolute favorite part, the green and the black spoilers. So first off, we have green, and we're going to start off with Approaching the Truth. This is obviously a pretty powerful card. It's still really just a cantrip, but the fact that it can go into your extra deck for Shahrazad obviously makes it incredibly powerful for that deck. This is generally the card that you're going to want to be looping if you're playing that deck with Ruin Stories. Just kind of like digging through your deck, because like we're heading into a control format. I don't really think that's a secret. And then this card just lets you, like, while your opponent is doing nothing, you're constantly drawing cards. It's kind of like the way that Lumia wanted to function last format, where you just draw a bunch more cards than your opponent and then, like, overwhelm them with advantage. Although that deck had command, and then this one has nothing. The struggle of Shahrazad, I believe that everybody has found, has been struggling to find a win condition. But, you know, some people have figured it out, some people haven't. Some people have mediocre ones that they're fine with. It's whatever. The point is, Approaching the Truth is a very good card. I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play outside of Shahrazad because it is just a cantrip. Like, yeah, it digs you 3 cards deep, but at the end of the day, you are just paying 1 mana to trade a card for another card, and like deck space is probably getting really tight, as a lot of people have noticed. So we'll see how that goes. But I think it's very, very good. I just don't think it'll really see play outside of like the Shahrazad deck. Cleansing Doll, one of the better addition removals for Shahrazad to be main decking because it does have quick cast for them. I don't really see a reason to play this in a deck that isn't Shahrazad. It does the same thing as the Tree Root Sprite, I believe its name is, and I believe it has the same stat line as well. But, you know, it's a 3-mana kill in addition. It's pretty cool. It's always nice to have those. Doll Audience. I'm going to be judging the dolls on the basis that you're playing them in Shahrazad where they have quick cast, because I think playing them in anything else is really mediocre. So take everything that I say with dolls, assuming you're playing them in Shahrazad. So when it enters the field, target resonator gains +2/+2 until end of turn. It's obviously a little bit more relevant with quick cast. However, I don't really think your opponent's going to be like attacking your dude and trying to kill it and only being like 100 bigger than it. Maybe 200. Maybe you get to like trade off of it, but I don't really see this card seeing play. I don't think Shahrazad like runs a lot of creatures. Enormous Effigy, this card's really bad. Evil Djinn, it's kind of an interesting card. Like, for the most part, with my experience with Shahrazad, I'm chilling around like Legend, like 1 or 2. Every now and then I'll get up to 3, but like I never want to be at Legend 5, never. So this is like for a different style of Shahrazad deck. Like maybe you're like I could see this as like a backup plan if you're like, oh, like my Ruin Stories from my extra deck got countered, I might as well just flip everything up and like go hard on this. But like you don't really want to have a fallback strategy in your main deck. You want to just have ways to protect your main strategy. So I could see this popping up as like a different kind of Shahrazad deck, but I don't think we're gonna see it. At least for the first few GPs. That might be a later down the line one. This card could have been so good. The problem is that if you have Legend 3 or higher, there has to be an addition on the field for you to play this card. Because it is not optional to destroy target addition. And that sucks, because like this could have been a really good 1-mana spell if Legend 3 was like anything else. I would have loved this card if it was like Legend 1, you know, give something +6/+6. Like Legend 4, flip something in your extra deck back down, and then Legend 5, add a Resonator from deck to hand. Like I think that would have been so cool. But instead they fucked it up. And if you have more than 3 or more cards revealed in your extra deck, you can't play this card without an addition. So I think it's unplayable because the Legend 1 like isn't really something you value in a Shahrazad deck. Last Davis of a Powerless Dragonoid. I think this is the card that takes Failure out of the format. Like sure, Lorite like kind of did. Everybody's gonna be running Lorite, but I think this card especially did. I tried an extra deck with like this, and then like replaced it with Black Tears. I didn't try like both of them in against Failure because I feel like that would have been a steamroll. But I wanted to know which one was better against Failure, this or Black Tears, and by a mile, it was definitely this one. The ability to remove the counters is really cool, and it takes a lot of like kind of not so much big contenders, but like decks that we thought might be relevant at the end of last format going forward. Like this kind of takes Mikage out of the format because when they go to flip, you just respond with this to wipe all the counters. And then like they lose them and then they flip and they come in with 0 counters. This is one of the cards that like makes Shayla very unplayable because she needs counters for her God's Art for whatever reason. You know, it's good against Kirakai. This is just good against a lot of things. And then in case you are playing against a deck that doesn't use counters, it's just cancel a red chant. That's actually really relevant for Shahrazad's playability in Wanderer, because Split Heaven and Earth would be a concern of yours. But now you have this always in your extra deck, instant speed, whoops, I canceled your Split Heaven and Earth, so that's pretty cool. I like this card a lot. I even think it'll see like side deck play in things that aren't Shahrazad. Lorite, obviously one of the best cards in the set. There's really no debate about that, nothing to talk about. It's a big old cancel, it costs 2 little mana, and it's a dude, so like it's searchable by more things than spells are. The choice to make it a dude is a little interesting. I think, given the second half of this card, the remove 3 Spirit Magics in your graveyard, put this card from your graveyard in your hand, is what made this card a Resonator. So you want to be playing this in your guild deck where you're playing a lot of Spirit Magics and you can recycle it from grave. However, by making it a Resonator, it is not searchable by Gil's ability. And I think that was actually a pretty smart design choice. Given, you know, outside of the fact that this card should not have been printed, at least they didn't like fuck that up. They didn't make this a spell along the way, because that would, oh my god, that would have been a nightmare. But yeah, obviously a very cool card. Looking at like TCG Player and stuff recently, I think this is currently the most expensive card in Force of Will that like you can pull out of a booster pack kind of thing. That's like obviously like not a chase card or anything. Like the most expensive like standard card that you can pull. That's what I'm talking about. Lorite's deletion magic. I thought it said deflection. I don't know how I feel about this card. Like if you're playing it in Gil, then because it is a spirit magic. If you're playing it in Gil, then it's really just like a, you know, however much mana I pay is how much mana you have to pay, because it'll get rid of... I'm sorry, no. It's a Wall of Wind in... It's a 0 mana Wall of Wind in Gil, and then however much mana you pay into it, they have to pay like that +1, basically. But I don't know. I don't think Gil's that good. There's a lot of things to stop him now, and he wasn't like particularly strong last format. Like he was good. He was like on the cusp of being competitive. He was like a solid tier 1.5, but I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit better now. Like, obviously he got a lot of cards. I'm just trying to think, like, in the context of the format, like, the only way to get rid of him is really Final Battle, and maybe people aren't running that as much in favor of single target deletion, but I don't know. We'll see. Personally, I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Gil's playstyle, but I don't know. They probably don't run 4 of this card, but... And then outside of Gil, I don't think this card's playable. Mostly because, like, at 3 mana, like at 2 mana, it's a Wall of Wind, and Ruin Stories is a 2 mana Wall of Wind. And then at 3 mana, it's like a, you know, your opponent has to pay 2, but at 3 mana I could just play Vanish instead. So like this card because it has the like 1 cost attached to it, you know, it's a little bit worse than other counter spells. Lorite's Wind, cancel target spell chance targeting a J Resonator targeting you or a J Resonator you control. With all the removal that we got, like, I could see this card being played in Gil, but absolutely nothing else. Just because it's like free on your backside, or like even 1 mana on your front side's not that bad, but like Gil's not a very Resonator heavy deck. It doesn't really care. Like, Gil got all this protection for Resonators. And by all this protection for Resonators, I literally just mean this card. But like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I don't care about my Resonator. My Resonator's like a fucking 6/6 Leaf Guard. Like, kill it. I dare you. Leaf Guardsman. I like this card for Gil a lot. Just it's an avatar essentially. For those of you that don't remember, World Tree Protector. That's what this card is. It was a 4/4, except it got bigger for the avatars in your grave. But when it died, it searched an avatar. This thing searches itself. It's we have a couple of cards like this. There's a red-white fairy that does it. There's Birds of Paradise. But this is like better for Gil because it's an elemental that like will replace itself when it dies. And you can also like send it to grave off Leaf Garb, so it's a pretty cool addition to the Gil deck. Leaf Reflector. This card's not good. It's just so much mana. This card's like interesting because it allows you to like, I don't know, like turn your Lorite into an elemental, but I can't, like, Gil does not want to be a creature heavy deck. It really barely wants to run the elementals, so I can't see you playing things that aren't elementals and having them die and then like trying to stick this card down. With so much instant speed removal in the format, like this thing needs to live at least until the the start of your opponent's turn in order to get its ability off, but I just don't think it's gonna happen. Null Page, I like this card a lot. I think this card's really cool. The fact that the Resonator doesn't come back when this edition dies is pretty big. Overall, like a really, really solid card. The triple green is like not really relevant because like I think everything that's running green is like base green. Maybe there'll be a base black deck out there that's also like running green as a splash that has trouble casting this card, but we'll see. I think it's a really good card. Patrolling Guard Doll, I actually like this card a lot. It's just the 3 mana 11/11 with quick cast. Because Legend 2 is like really easy to get. You're usually sitting on like Legend 1 at least. Legend 2 sometimes, like if you've got your Agony and your Approach flipped. And like, just the 3 mana 11/11 with quick cast is like a pretty beefy dude. But I don't know. He's not like great, but he's one of the, like, he's on the upper echelon of dolls because dolls are weak. This card's pretty cool. Like if you were to go a more doll-centric deck, which I think is a pretty cool and interesting idea to take the Shahrazad deck, I think this would be like your centerpiece. He's 2 mana and he doesn't die to a single use of True Blade, which is really, really important. He's got that 6/6 stat line that you love to see on 2-drops. And then like whenever a doll enters the field, you draw a card, and then at Legend 3, your other dolls get buffed. Like he's a pretty cool dude if like Doll Swarm is the way that you want to be playing the deck, which like I don't know how viable it is, but it's definitely something I'd be interested in like tinkering around with, or like if somebody has like a baseline list that they'd want like to send me and have me look at, like I'd be down for that. This is a pretty cool concept to me. But as far as like competitive Shahrazad goes, I think we're definitely going to see it go more the control route, so probably won't see him for a bit. Rachel, the Ancient Library Researcher, the boogeyman of the format. The reason I drink. This card does a lot of things, and a lot of very good things. Too many good things, and then it has a leave the field trigger instead of a death trigger. This card is just absolutely insane. There's really not much to say about it. Scarlet's Agony. This card's really, really good for the Shahrazad deck because it's like the way you don't lose to aggro. It's the way that you beat like IU decks and things like that. As you just keep recycling this card, and because it says draw a card, it's playable. Like if this card didn't say draw a card, I don't think I even would have like considered it for an extra deck, but I think this one's a must include. And then I don't think it'll see play outside of it because mostly just because like miscalculation exists and like fog exists. And like sure, maybe you're just running green and you want to play it, but I don't think that's a thing that we're gonna run into in the format. Charizard's Marionette. It's a 2-drop that dies to a single instance of True Blade, but when you give Resonators quick cast, their value goes up significantly because you're leaving up the mana anyway, and then they essentially have swiftness because you can just play them at the end of your opponent's turn. And even if your opponent True Blades this, like you still draw a card. I think he's a pretty solid doll. Probably the best or second best doll, I would say. He's definitely like top 3 dolls to play in a Shahrazad deck, no matter which version you're going. This card's not good. 3 mana dorks are too expensive. I don't care if they have barrier. This is irrelevant. Like it's a 1 mana 5/5 with downside. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Oh yeah, this card's like really weird and convoluted and also not good. Shahrazad I will get to at the end of the video. This card could be, it's like potential, it goes back to the Jhin thing, right? Like if you want to play a legend-based Shahrazad deck, like this is a pretty good inclusion. It's 2 mana 10/10. It's fucking huge. And you can achieve a 2 mana 10/10 by turn 3, I think. If you go for, I mean, it doesn't really matter who goes first. Yeah, no, it'll always be by the, whoever went first's third turn, you can have Legend 5. So like, turn 2 10/10 is really good, but outside of that, like, it's whatever. Same thing with this guy, like, he gets better the more things you have revealed, and like, sure, 4 mana for a 6/6 is like whatever, but shuffling a dude to the bottom is nothing to sneeze at. Not shuffling to the bottom, but putting a dude on bottom. But like in your standard Shahrazad control type decks that I think we're going to see, I don't think you're going to see either of these cards. The Ancient Library, this card's a pretty interesting, I think it'll see like side deck play for like pretty much every deck against anything that Lorite is really valuable against. And as a result of that, I don't think you can play a deck that like Lorite's very valuable against. Like anything with a God's Art, the new Gil Ruler, the starter deck one, I think he loses to Lorite, and then anything that loses to Lorite gets hyper accelerated, it loses to this. And it's like playable because it replaces itself, so like you don't have to, you know, just recycle Lorites with it. I mean, you do, but it does like cantrip on entry, which is good. This is the kind of what I'm talking about with the dolls, where like it's contradictory to what the deck wants to do. Like Gil does not want to swarm you with leaf elementals. It wants to like play a bunch of spells. Charizard's the same way. This runs into the same problem. Puppet's Last Dance, this is probably one of the worst stories. Sack a doll, destroy a resonator, you know, whatever. Like cool, it combos with Marionette, but that's still like a 3 mana kill a guy, draw a card. And it's like a lot of effort when I could just like 2 mana 1 card draw on 2 mana 1 card kill a guy, don't draw a card, and I think that's better. I don't care if this is coming out of my extra deck. I think the extra deck is pretty set on what you want to be doing with it, and I don't think this card fits into that at all. I also don't think this card fits into it. I don't think Shayla is good. I've never hidden that fact. I've been saying it since day one. I don't think she's good. I know that the Force Will community absolutely loves her, and the only reason I can think of that is that she's a mermaid, but I think everybody understands that she is not competitively viable. I think, you know, even with her being revealed to have a God's Art and the Thunderstorm mechanic and all that, I still think she's unplayable, so I don't think you need to worry about this card. But even if she was, like, that just puts the nail in the coffin. And then we're on to the black spoilers. So, Black Fang Tyrannosaurus. I actually like this card a lot. It's a 6 mana 20/20 if you're null with Precision and Pierce. And the Pierce is what I really like about him. Like, Pierce is a pretty much dead mechanic that we don't see a lot. I think the last card we saw was like Wolful Samurai Spirit with Ayu, and then the time before that was like 6 sets earlier. So it's cool to see Pierce come back. But I don't think he's like New Frontiers playable. This card deals with gems. We're going to look over that. Black Tears, destroy all resonators at total cost 1 or less, and it's a story. This is like one of the... So in my opinion, there are like 6 cards you could play in your extra deck, and then this is one of the flex ones. It's like this and Last Days of a Powerless Dragonoid are like the 2 flex ones. I think the other 4 are kind of set in stone. With those 4 being Approaching the Truth, Ruined Stories, Scarlet's Agony, and Evil Elemental Uprising, as I will get to. I think like you have to run those 4, and then like you can swap between this and Powerless Dragonoid. I don't think it'll see play in anything else though. I don't think like 1-drop Swarm decks are how the format's about to turn out. Blackwing Dinosaur, it's just like it's an 8/6 with Flyer with downside for 2 mana. It's not that good. I don't like this card either. Like you don't want to be losing your own card advantage, and then you don't want your opponent to like discard cards that they want to discard. You need very like specific discard. Like you need targeted discard, as I call it. You're gonna find that I don't like a lot of the null cards. I think that Scarlet herself is very interesting, and I'll get into that when I touch on the rulers. But I think the null mechanic is just fucking terrible in this game. I don't think it worked in Magic. It worked a little bit too well in Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I don't think it's gonna really pan out in Force of Will. And it was only good in Yu-Gi-Oh because like it's not a resource-based game, and they had like Infernity Arcfiend, which was just like absolutely busted. And it's like, oh, I top deck Arcfiend, I guess I win the game. And like that, I mean, the Infernities in Yu-Gi-Oh went through like they would play like 6 or 7 cards in a turn off of no cards in hand, because like their cards had to generate other cards in ways that like didn't give you cards in hand, or like would put 1 card in your hand that you could play instantly. And resource-based games just don't have that capability. If they did, it would be extremely broken. Everything would have to be extremely undercosted, and it's just unhealthy. So I don't think Null's going to pan out in Force of Will. This thing deals with mystery counters though. Sorry, this is Bloodsucking Butler, Ray as a Tenant. This is the Draft Ruler turned Resonator. And then you can remove a mystery counter from your J Ruler, and something gets -2/-2, and that's basically useless. There are so much better things to be doing with your mystery counters. When this card is put into a Crumbling Majin. When this card is put into a graveyard from your field, your opponent discards a card, and it's a Wicked Spirit. This is, it's good to see that we're still getting Wicked Spirits, albeit I wish they were a bit better. 4 mana, 9/9, not a good stat line. Your opponent discards a card, whatever. Dark Elf Gravekeeper. When it enters the field, search your deck for a Dark Elf, put it in your graveyard, then shuffle your deck. That's pretty cool for the Dark Elf deck specifically, because Freyla can add something from your graveyard to your hand for 300 life, which like kind of gets the deck going. However, I don't think this is like what the deck needed to function. Like, I don't think it's going to make it competitively viable. Dark Impact. I like this card a lot. You destroy a Resonator, and then you put a dinosaur from your hand into the field. And obviously, like, I liked it a lot when it was spoiled before we knew that we were getting 2 stoning to deaths. But I still think, like, it's maybe a cool card. Just for, because like dinosaurs are so cool and so powerful and so high costed, and it can't be Severing Winds if you put, like, it can't be canceled at all if you put it in with this card, because it's part of a resolving ability. Like, yeah, they can like cancel the entry trigger or whatever with Fluoride, but I like this card a lot in concept. I just don't think it'll see play. This is an inverse card and is therefore not good. Disaster at Sasaru Place. One of the worst stories, because it's 3 mana, destroy a Light Resonator, and then your opponent banishes a gem. I don't think we're going to see like Light Resonators really take over anything. Embrace of Darkness. This card's pretty good. It's really good in draft, but in New Frontiers, it's like not terrible. The curve historically has always been like 3-drop or lower Resonators, except for like Gwyber format and not counting Fae or 4-drop Elves. Like everything else costs 3 or less. So 2 mana kill something. It's like not ideal because we have a white stoning and a red stoning, but like if you're not playing white or red for some reason, like you're just playing green-black, like this is a suitable replacement. Evil Elemental Uprising. This card's pretty fucking good, especially because it's a story and it can't be chased. That's kind of the insane part. And it just takes like a lot of strategies out of the format, and it's really good in Wanderer too. It shuts down every Reanimator deck. The fact that you have access to it from the start of the game is a little bit much, but I do think like this will see like side deck play in other decks as well, which is kind of what I was hoping for the stories. Like I wanted them to be good in Shahrazad and then other decks side decks, and Evil Elemental Uprising fits all the criteria. Final words. Obviously this card's not good, however I have been just begging for a card that says destroy target J Resonator, and beggars can't be choosers, so I got what I asked for. Grim of the Crimson Moon. This is like one of the better inverse cards just because its front side is so good. Like Barrier White and Black automatically makes it immune to stoning to deaths and things like that. And then when it enters the field, you can reveal any number of fairy tales. That's like a more or less irrelevant part. The fairy tale aspect keeps like creeping over into black sometimes, and it's a little awkward. Doesn't really fit in. However, whenever it attacks, you put 2 mystery counters on your J Ruler. And then whenever you do Judgment, you may remove 2 mystery counters from your J Ruler to invert this card. So like this is one of the optional inverts because you don't have to remove the mystery counters to do it. And I think that mystery counter addition, like things that put mystery counters on your ruler, is something that the archetype has been lacking a lot of, and I think this is like 2 mystery counters is a lot to put on something. I can't think of any other card off the top of my head that puts 2 mystery counters on your ruler, and doing it every time this card attacks while it has an inherent amount of protection is really good in my opinion. And then the backside like isn't terrible, right? Yeah, it like picks something and it just kills it. It doesn't matter what it is. It loses imperishable. It loses, this card cannot be destroyed, so like no matter what it is, it just dies. And then cards in your opponent's graveyard lose all abilities. Like this was very, very specifically made to counter Fox, and then we just ended up banning Fox out basically anyway. So, but I do think the front side is good enough that this card would be around for a while. Okay, yeah, and it does say J Ruler when it attacks. So like even if you flip and then choose not to flip this, you can still just like pump up more mystery counters onto your J Ruler. So that's pretty cool. Heavenly Fruit. This card's really interesting. Obviously, this was made for the null mechanic, but I think this is a really good aggro card in like Wanderer. I don't think this card's like New Frontiers playable because we're going into a control format. You can't dump your hand. Like you just can't do that. But we'll see. This is a bad dinosaur because it doesn't cost a bunch of mana. Lily, the Last Flower. Target Dark Elf. When this card enters the field, target Resonator your opponent controls gains -2/-2 for each Dark Elf in your graveyard until end of turn. So, I don't really know a lot about Dark Elves, but I'm pretty sure you play a lot of Dark Elves in that deck. It's not like Gil where, like, you want to play a bunch of, like, all the Elementals say play a bunch of Elementals, but you don't want to do that. I think Dark Elves do want to be playing a bunch of Dark Elves. And then you can remove a Dark Elf in your graveyard from the game to put a +1/+1 counter on this card, and it gains Drain until end of turn. And Drain stacks in this game, so, let's say you have 4 Dark Elves in your grave. Like, 2 mana enter the field, -8 something, and then next turn attack, and then gain 9 times 4, 3,600 life. That's a lot. The problem is that it's a Dark Elf card. Like, that's not very good. Like, gaining 3,600 life and killing a guy is, like, cool and all, but not when that's, like, my deck's like, that's my deck's big play at that point. That's not a good big play. Like, it's a good play, but, I mean, then I lose all my resources. Release Protector, when this card in your graveyard is removed from the game, target Dark Elf gains barrier until end of turn, and that obviously is meant to combo with the last card, but once again, it's just not that good. Look of Despair, your opponent discards 2 cards, and then null, your opponent discards 3 cards. I don't think this is good because I never want to get the null effect off because I never want to have 0. I never want this to be my last card in hand. And then 3 mana, your opponent discards 2 cards is like, so whatever, dude. Like, if you're not picking what I'm discarding, that's so fine, but you could make me discard 6 cards as long as I get to keep that Rachel in my hand, you know what I mean? I just don't like things like this. Bring back Darkstorm. Whenever this card deals damage, Lurker and the null, whenever this card deals damage to a Resonator, destroy that Resonator, and then null, 1 in black, put this card from your graveyard into your hand. I think this, I think that last part's like a pretty interesting mechanic. Like, this is like a Sinister Serpent type deal for when you have no cards in hand, but the fact that I have to have no cards in hand to use that ability is like whatever. Otherwise, I think it would have been like a cool monkey type Resonator, but there aren't really any monkey type decks left, so. Null Illusion, null draw a card. Once again, null is not a good mechanic. Refuse Collector, this card's really bad. It's very vulnerable. It dies to True Blade, which like isn't like a great argument for 1-drops not to be played. So here's the thing. I've been having this argument a lot with like my team and my friends as I'm like building decks and then like arguing against them in cards, and this is something that I want to put out there as well. So when I say that a card dies to removal and that makes it bad, obviously, like, that's a faulty argument. Like, everything dies to fucking removal. Aaron, what are you talking about? So what I mean when I say that, like, a card has to die to removal and, like, still be good, it means that, like, it can't have to sit on the field in order to gain value. Something like this, something like Abdul. Those are cards that, like, die to removal, but also have to sit on field to gain, and, like, to get value out of them. Those are bad cards. Things that are good cards are, like, things that have a very high impact enter ability. Things like Rachel, things like Captain Hook. Or something that is like very big for its cost, like Gwyber, or something that has some kind of evasion, like Barrier or something like that. So in order for a Resonator to be good and playable, in my opinion, it needs to either like cantrip, get immediate value, or have some kind of evasion. And like Sacred Elf and Malfear are like kind of an exception to the rule. Well, have Quick Cast is also, you know, a pretty good one. And, like, Sacred Elf, I'm actually not sure how I feel about Sacred Elf right now. Like, last format it was fine for the GP that I played in, because nobody, like, realized how good True Blade was. I didn't play any events after, like, I won Atlanta, and then people figured out how good True Blade was. So, like, sure, you could pull me, and you could, like, call me on that one, like, hey, you played Sacred Elf in a True Blade format, but, like, I really didn't. People weren't really on that card for Atlanta. But, like, going into this format, like, Abdul looks really good on paper, but there's a lot of removal, and he has a card that you need to sit on in order to get value out of it. And it's the reason that, like, I didn't play any Abdul in my Fox deck at Masters. Like, it's the same, it goes back to that argument. So, like, obviously I felt this way about cards for a very long time. And we're kind of coming back to that, but now in a bigger way, where it's like there's so much removal that, like, every Resonator needs to get value in order to be good. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I didn't articulate that very well. But I think most of you are going to understand what I just kind of ranted about for a few minutes there. Basically, things need to have a strong enter ability or have barrier in order to be playable, is like the baseline of my thinking. Don't read too hard into that. Don't try to pick that apart. It's a fluid argument. Revive all the clan, target Resonator from your graveyard into your hand. It's just like a Disentomb effect, and then you can remove a mystery counter from your J-Ruler and put 2 dudes from your graveyard into your hand. I don't think that's good. We have a lot of, like, put a Resonator from your graveyard into your hand right now. And this, like, just put 3 mystery counters on your J-Ruler, or put 2 1/1 counters on your J-Ruler. Or target J-Resonator, rather, is like, whatever. I don't give a shit. It's not good. It's not what I want my deck space to be doing. So whenever... Stagehand Doll, sorry. Whenever a Resonator is put into your opponent's graveyard from a non-removed area, remove it from the game, and then you gain 200 life. 3 mana 6/9 is, like, a really awkward-looking stat line that I don't think we've seen before. But, you know, to each his own. Stagehand Doll do you, but I think this is definitely weaker on... You know, this is one of those things that I'm talking about, where, like, this card has to sit on field in order to gain value. And that's negated a little bit by it having Quick Cast, but whatever. Dusk Girl, I'll get to at the end. Thought Control is easily one of the best cards in this set, because Force Will historically has such a low curve. Voidsaurus, I don't like this card either. Like, it's basically just a worse version of that 2-drop 12/12 dragon that like costs 1 less or costs 1 more for each card in your hand. Because that thing like I could have like 2 cards in hand and I can play that for 4 mana, whereas like with 2 cards in hand this thing's still 6 mana. So I don't like it. Like it's a dinosaur cool, but it like doesn't. It's not like Mosasaurus. Like it doesn't do anything on enter. Null Darkness, obviously a very good Stoning Death. So the reason that like it's kind of weird because like Black didn't seem to actually get a whole lot this set, and then like you look at the multicolor cards like Null Darkness, Ruined Story, and Twin Blade, you realize that like we got 3 Black rulers this set, and like that's one of the reasons that you're gonna see Black come up in a big way. And Thought Control. Like if it wasn't for Thought Control, I don't know if Black would be as big as it's going to be. Ruined Story, obviously a very good card for Shahrazad, very playable outside of Shahrazad. Well, not like very playable, but like it's better than like Death at Midnight, right? It's very versatile. And then Twin Blade, I like this card a lot. And I think the art on this thing is sick. Same with Sword of Fate. Twin Blade, obviously like very good. This is like a very good anti-aggro card because like you can play Atama, and then if your opponent has like I don't know. I want to say Sylvia, but I don't want to say Sylvia because then they're going to use my argument because then Tama can't block. But if they have like 2 nondescript 6/6s with swiftness, like 2 Lancelots, we'll say, sure. Lancelot's legal against, for my example. So they have 2 Lancelots and like they attack, and all you have is a Tama. Then like you can block with your Tama, -6/-6, the one that's not attacking, and then +6/+6 your Tama. And that's kind of a trick that I've been doing since like I started playing the game with like Underground Dragger. Just like 2-for-1ing your opponent off of blocks. I think is like a really, that's what makes a combat trick good to me, is like if I have the potential to like 2-for-1 off of it, which is why I don't like things like Rapid Growth, like that's only ever going to be a 1-for-1, with 1 cast of Rapid Growth equaling your Resonator, essentially. And like, you could call it a 2-for-1 over the course of a few turns, but this is like an immediate 2-for-1. And I like that a lot. And then like, Sword of Fate is like a really good backside, like it's either destroy target J Resonator, or reanimate a 5-drop, like, or lower, obviously, but like that's really good. I like this card a lot, it's sick. Magic Stone of Hope, like, obviously, the stones are like whatever, we still have dual stones, but even like, when we don't have dual stones, I think like waiting until you Judgment to get access for Black is like a really shitty drawback that a lot of decks aren't about. So I don't like that one. Null Magic Stone is like a really good example of like, what dual stone should look like going forward. It's like, it produces a primary color and then has a drawback to a secondary color. Like, sure, Null, whatever, produce Black-Red, I don't think that's ever going to be relevant, but like, that's a really good mechanic right there, is just produce base and then, you know, produce red and have a downside. And then Speaking Stone, I don't really like, because like this card isn't splashable. Like going forward, if these are like our replacements for dual stones, then we basically got a mono white stone, a mono green stone, and then a black red stone. Like, but we'll see. These obviously aren't going to be like the only dual stones that we see between like now and whatever next cluster's first set is. So we'll see where they choose to take that. And then the variant cards, obviously, are all unplayable, except for the one-time variant Enormous Effigy. So if you remember, I said Enormous Effigy was garbage, which is correct. However, variant Enormous Effigy is actually a pretty good card, specifically because it has Quick Cast, which means like when your opponent attacks, you declare no blocks, and then they hit you for like, you know, however much damage. And you just cheat this guy in, like after you declare no blocks, eat the damage, and then they eat the damage as well. Just keep in mind that this is a triggered ability. And if your opponent kills you, you will not deal the damage back to them. You will lose the game instead. But I like this card a lot, and Shahrazad is like your top end. And then Variant Voidosaurus, like whatever. Null, it gains like symbol skills instead of costing less. It's fucking garbage. And now I'm going to get into the rulers of the set. Alright, so now we're going to get into the rulers of the set. Normally I would do them in order of white, red, blue, green, black, because that's how the set goes, but I know that most of you probably just want to see me talk about Shahrazad. So I'm going to do her first. It just makes sense. If you want to watch, you know, me do the other ones, that's great. I appreciate it. I love that you love my feedback on these sets and like my insight into things. But if you just want to see me talk about Shahrazad, I have put it first so you don't have to go digging. So Grimoire 5, a new mechanic. I'm not gonna like go in depth explaining the mechanic itself. I'm kind of gonna explain this operating under the assumption that you have like a functioning knowledge of the card. So your extra deck has 5 cards. Dolls in your hand gain quick cast. 0, reveal a face-down card from your extra deck and keep it revealed until end of game. You may copy that card. If you do, you may play the copy. You have to pay its cost. Play this ability only once per turn. So, what makes this card, this ruler, so good is the ability for Ruined Stories to loop things like Approaching the Truth and Scarlet's Agony. I think any creature-based deck is going to have a very hard time beating you if you're looping Scarlet's Agony on them, and especially like a J-Ruler-based deck like IU that's only attacking with a singular thing, like you just Scarlet's Agony it, and then on your turn you like Ruined Stories it back down. And while it's like, Grimoire is a powerful mechanic, but it's not perfect, right? I can still cancel the ones from your extra deck and then like they remain face up. Like Fair's spell is probably going to be a big card going forward, because if I can cancel the Ruin Stories in your extra deck, then like I'm in a pretty good spot, because now one of the Ruin Stories in your main deck is going to have to go towards flipping that back down along with something else. But those I can handle a little more easily, like especially with Rachel being in the format, I can see those coming a little bit easier. And then like Ruin Stories is probably something you want to be searching off of your Rachel if you are playing Shahrazad. And then like Dolls in your hand getting quick cast makes an otherwise unplayable archetype actually pretty decent. Not like amazing, but like they're good, I guess. This is one of the rulers I've been playing around with more than the other ones. You know, trying out different color combinations and stuff. But I think overall, like it's a pretty straightforward thing. Generally, I think you're going to want to build it more control-y, although I did talk about a doll variant earlier. I just don't know what that would look like. It's not something I've put a lot of effort into, but that's really all I can like say on the ruler side. I feel like it's pretty straightforward. And then the J-Ruler side, mostly irrelevant. In all the testing I've done with this card, I've only flipped it once, and that's because I got shackled turn 1. But it is flying. It's a 10-10, which is like not irrelevant. Like, if you're ever in a shitty spot with Shahrazad, like just flip your fucking ruler. I don't give a shit if you lose access to your extra deck. Just fucking dome them for 10 in the air with Shahrazad. Doll's still getting quick cast, which is really important. Something that we've seen with the development of Force Will in the past is that like things will have this really cool ruler side ability and then just lose it on the J-Ruler side. Like Adelbear can play Wanderers for any color on his ruler side, and then on his J-Ruler side he fucking loses that ability for whatever reason. Sylvia can only tap for stones on the one side, or tap for green or red or whatever the shit she does on the one side. So it's nice that they like, you know, picked up on that and gave it the ability on both sides. And then Legend 3 put a non-Magic Stone, non-J-Ruler entity your opponent controls on top of its deck, so a Resonator or addition basically. And then Legend 5, search your deck for a doll and put it into the field. And I almost forgot that when it enters the field, it doesn't matter, like Legend 0, whatever the fuck you want to call it, just put a target doll from your graveyard into the field, which is pretty good if you're running like the variant effigy and it died already this game, or like if you're playing multiple of it. Like if you're playing that hyper accelerated like Legend deck that I was talking about, with like the Jin and the dolls that like get big and stuff, I actually think it's pretty good to like flip your ruler then. Like you're playing a different style of deck when it goes for your, like it uses your ruler side to, you know, kind of get utility out of the early game. Like I'm still casting Approaching the Truth, I'm still casting Scarlet's Agony. My Ruin Story could even like make you sack a guy or like Wall of Wind something. Like I don't have the recurring versatility of my extra deck, although I could if I, you know, Ruin Stories it back down from my deck. But I think that it'd be interesting to see like a more Legend focused deck around her that like doesn't like turbo flip, but flips eventually. Maybe like turn 6 or 7 or something, I'll flip into this, as opposed to like the Shahrazad control deck that I think everybody's thinking of, where you never want to flip. So I really like the versatility presented by this ruler. I obviously think that one is a little bit better than the other, but you know, there have been a lot of seemingly underpowered strategies in Force Will before that have like later in the format come to fruition when we all kind of like, or not all, but like somebody figured out the build for it. So I'm interested to see what that's going to look like. Then we'll go on to Princess of Fleeting Hope, Aimul. Princess of Despair is her full name. I don't like this card. This card is butt. The ruler side is untap a dude on your opponent's turn. That is a counter for Lumia. And I put the word counter in quotes because if you side deck Aimul against me, and I am playing Lumia Rachel, I'm going to clap the shit out of you. It's the same, like, when obviously I played Fox for a long time. Anybody that sided in Blazer against me, I just felt straight up disrespected. Like, I can't imagine what kind of, I feel like your ruler is very important in this format. And I feel like you can't be main decking Aimul, because this ruler is fucking garbage. And I can't imagine what kind of deck you are that you feel siding into Aimul is the correct choice against Lumia, that your own ruler will not already give you an advantage against. Because if you're playing a deck if you're bringing a deck to a GP, I would hope that you have some kind of strategy against Lumia for game 1. Like I don't think I don't think that's a deck you can afford to just piss away game 1 to. So I don't actually see side decking this card as like a valuable tool for you. And then like the J-Ruler side, so like, let's talk about an Aimul deck. Let's not talk about it in the context of like siding this in against Lumia. Let's talk about an Aimul deck. It's a fucking 3/3. The amount of inverse cards that I would need for this card to be any kind of threatening is 4 inverse entities. So I have to have 4 cards on the field when I flip this bitch in a format of removal where like 2 of the guys have access to, you know, dodging, stunning to death. It's the little red one that I think is Barrier Black Red, and then the Grim. But like those are the Grim is like 3 mana, the other one's 2 mana. Like sure I could play the additions, but like none of them are very good unless I stack up on Life Altering, whatever it's called, the one that calls a stone when I flip. And then like sure it's flying, sure it's imperishable. The idea of the deck is that you want to flip it multiple times, but like that's not what I want to be doing with my mana. That's so ineffective. Like I can't. When you build decks like this, you have to sit down and actually think about what the fuck you're doing with your deck. You have to go, okay, what turn do I realistically first want to flip my ruler? And I think the answer is like turn 6 or 7 if you want to be setting up for shit, because I don't want to like flip this thing and then continue to call stones. And like, yeah, that's an option, but I mean, I can't imagine any inverse card that's going to make it worth it that I could rip off the top of my deck and then inverse in with her. You know, I don't know, dude. I feel like people don't think about what their turns actually look like when they build decks, and that holds a lot of people up. Like, what do your turns look like in an inverse deck, and then try to tell me that that is better than what like Shahrazad or Lumia Rachel or like Kirik or something is doing. That's my thoughts on Aimel. Then we get into Kirik. He didn't go the direction that I thought he was going to go with his strength count, like his unsealed abilities, and I feel like a lot of the pro players were really excited to see him, and then we saw him and we were kind of disappointed. I'm still not convinced that he's bad. I think he could actually be pretty decent. I just think he's going to like take some tweaking and figuring out. But obviously, like Shahrazad is such a cool and exciting new ruler that nobody's really looking like super hard into Kirik. I think we're all trying to figure out the new mechanics on other cards and just valuing our time building those decks more. So Kirik is something that I would expect to be a late performer, like coming in the last GP. I don't know if he's like good enough to win a GP, but I think a skilled player could definitely bring him to a top cut finish. I just don't know what it would look like just yet, and that, I mean, I have a paid invite, I might as well give it a shot, right? I have a gold-plated Kirik that I'm not trying to get rid of, I might as well bring him to a Grand Prix, right? Figure out what the fuck I can do. So the unsealed ability that he got is you can remove 2 strength counters from him and look at the top 5 cards of your deck and then put a battle art from among them into your hand. And that's one of the problems with Kirik is the battle art concept. Kirik kind of got split on his support between like battle arts, beasts, and dragonoids, and then now his J-Roller side deals with dragons, so he just got a little bit too split focused there. I feel like he should have just like picked like just dragons and like focused on dragons, and like that would have been pretty cool because there's a decent amount of dragon support. Instead, like he split that into dragonoids, and I'm just very annoyed by the fact that the dragonoid race exists, and then Kirik just kind of personifies that on my frustration, where it's like he is a dragonoid, he deals with dragons. I just want to play Siegfried. When Vingolf 3 dropped, that was my favorite card in the set, and I really just want to play Siegfried. And Dragonoids ruined that for me. So his front side ability is probably more about like cycling through your deck. There's a couple of good battle arts, but no like great ones. And then the problem is like the Powerless Dragonoid card exists, and like yeah, you can take away my strength counters, then I can get them back. But the bigger problem is that you can just cancel my battle arts. So not a huge fan of the ruler side ability. I wish it was better. I wish it did something not dealing with battle arts. And then the J-Roller side, he gained a God's Art, and I think that's all he gained on the backside. Yeah, and it's remove 7 strength counters, which is a really awkward number, because most things put them on or take them off in multiples of 5, so, I mean, obviously, taking off 7 is better than taking off 10, and you can still, like, flip God's Art with the enter ability on a chase to put 15 more strength counters on, so, like, if you have 10, you flip, you pay 7, you go down to, 3, then you go up to 15. And he can still blast through blockers, and then the God's Art, giving him +10/+10 is like what makes him potentially viable in my mind. Perisseo with Sprinting Flame Horse would deal 2,400 damage in the air, and he's not dealing it in the air, but he still has the option to punch through blockers with his remove 5 strength counters ability, and I don't think we're going into a format of big resonators with how much removal we have. I think we're going into a pretty resonator light format, so at most I'm going to have to remove 10 strength counters to kill something, and like, sure, a God's Art's not a great ability to be getting into a format where Lorite got printed and you can just cancel it, but like, I'm not like relying on my God's Art to win the game. I think the starter deck Gil is a deck that's going to like rely on that to win the game, and that's why something like that can't be played, but I don't see a reason why I can't just like cheat in a fucking 10/10 dragon at the end of your turn that has barrier blue and black, and then blasts things into oblivion if they, if they enter the field from anywhere other than your hand. I could see that, like, I mean, obviously I would prefer to do it on my turn, so that I can take advantage of the +10/+10. However, that +10/+10 like does make him kind of hard to final battle. Like, barring the dragon coming in, like if I don't even play dragons and you're like, oh, I'm going to final battle your Kirik, I'm just going to buff him up to a 22/20 and survive it, because you're not paying 4,000 life. But the big thing is, like, with Pumpkin Pig coming out, I feel like he's pretty I feel like he's, viable. pretty much solely on the back of Pumpkin Pig, just because like he does cheat in a Resonator. He doesn't inherently give the Resonator swiftness, but the fact that Pumpkin Pig exists to give something swiftness, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying too hard to like hope that Kirik's going to be good because I do like the concept of him so much, but we'll see. And that's my thoughts on Kirik. Shayla. I didn't think this bitch could get worse, and then she did. It's incredible how poorly thought out this card was. And that's not really like a rag on the design team. Like I think that this card is good and flavorful. I think that they did a pretty good job of making like a cool blue ruler, and I feel like the community is happy as long as they get their cool blue ruler. Like they're not competitive, they never have been, but like Flute, Valentina, Shayla, like these are cards that the community loves and are just not that good. I mean, like, Val 2 was good, but, you know, Val 1, like, I get that shit talked at me every day. Someone's like, oh, Val 1 and Wonder. Like, no, it's not a thing. You just love blue cards for some reason. It's like I don't know if you guys just love blue, if you just love mermaids, or if you actively like cards that are bad. So what the card actually does. Rain is a mechanic that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Thunderstorm is a mechanic I'm sure you're all familiar with, or at least I'm going to explain this on the assumption that you are. If it's thunderstorming, it's not raining, and that's a big problem. That's a big problem for Shayla. She's kind of like Kirik, where she's already got that confliction going on of like, oh, you know, I want it to thunderstorm, but I also want it to rain. Kirik wants dragons, he also wants dragonoids, and then battle arts, and she's not as conflicted as Kirik, but her cards kind of are. Like, her support is just a lot weaker than Kirik's, is I think one of the big problems. So like her ruler side ability is actually pretty shit. You can put on a counter, or you can remove a counter and gain Thunderstorm, and that's just one, really slow. Two, I thought she was bad, and I thought she made it Thunderstorm every turn. So when I found out that she was worse than what I thought she was, boy, did I have a field day ragging on my friends. That's really all there is to say on the ruler side. Like, it's just that one ability, like either make it Thunderstorm or put a counter on. And then her J ruler side, she got the Weather's Thunderstorm until end of turn. So like now she does it on the J side. It's just every turn it's Thunderstorming. And then her God's Art, remove 2 electricity counters from this card, destroy target J Resonator, rest all Resonators your opponent controls. That had a lot of potential to be really good. The problem is that 1, it's a God's Art, and Lorite got printed. 2, it deals with counters, and Powerless Dragonoid is probably holding Shahar's outside decks, and they can respond to your flip by removing all of the counters off of you. And sure, you cannot put a counter on that turn, go, I'm going to Judgment, they remove all your counters, that resolves, you put on 1 more counter, and then you flip, and you have 1 fucking counter, and you need 2 to God's Art. What a slap in the face that is. I'm so sorry for everybody that like wanted Shayla to be good or thought she was going to be playable, because like I feel like she had potential, and then she just like lived up to none of it. Like, this God's Art it's never going to resolve. It's never going to resolve, and it's like I don't know the word that I was looking for, but basically it's something that you want to be doing in like a swarm deck, and there just aren't a lot of good blue creatures, and I feel like you have to be blue-based to be playing Shayla. Maybe I'm overthinking that one, and that's a problem on my deck building experience, but I can't imagine like somebody showing up with like a green-based Shayla deck and like beating me in a GP, but I don't know. I feel like she just had so much. I feel like she actually had about as much potential as Kirik, and then just wound up doing even less. They were a little bit too worried about like making the Thunderstorm mechanic good, because like Thunderfish is Mega Thunderfish is such a good card, and then Giga Thunderfish is like also a really good card, but it's just all that blue has really. Like, blue is a tempo based color, and tempo is not the name of the game in Force of Will. The name of the game in Force of Will is not paying the appropriate mana cost for cards or abilities. It's the name of the game in Force of Will is doing things for 0 mana. And all she does for 0 mana is make it Thunderstorm. And then you have to spend mana to capitalize on that. Does that make sense? That's my thoughts on Shayla. Duskgirl. I love this ruler in concept. I have an idea for a few decks for her. None of them revolve around Null or flipping her. I think that she has a lot of value on a ruler side. And then the J ruler side is obviously very strong, and like if I can ever get there, sure, but like Null is not the way that I would play this ruler. I wouldn't play her as like a turbo flip deck that like dumps my hand kind of thing. Maybe in Wanderer, where you have access to things like Cthulhu and more burn spells and stuff, but in New Frontiers, definitely not, in my opinion. And it's not even because of burn descenders, it's just because like her J ruler side is not that good. Like, she doesn't have Pierce, so she can just like get blocked by a Tama. Yeah. I mean, no, because I was gonna say that she gets to recover if she gets the shit. Okay, she does have first strike. Alright, maybe she's a little bit better than I thought on the J ruler side, but definitely not enough for me to like build a deck around her. Sorry for the like long pause there. I was reading it, like thinking about the premise of Atama blocking and how this would work out, because I forgot that she had first strike, and I honestly forgot about this ability. It's not super relevant because she doesn't have Pierce, so the damage won't go through anyway. But so like 2 attacks is good if like you have flying or you have Pierce. But 2 attacks when like one of them is just like eat a chump blocker, and then the second one is like, now I guess I hit you in the face for 1,000. And then I have no cards in hand, so I might as well dump all of my mana into the fire breathing. But you know, this is a deck that like wants to be base red and then play a bunch of black cards. Because like the ruler side ability is really good. Like deal 500 damage to something for red mana is great, and then like deal 7 on a dinosaur is actually extremely relevant because Rachel has 700 defense. And like sure, Lumia Rachel's a very good deck. I don't think anybody's gonna argue that, but you can run them out of Rachel's relatively quickly if like you're just paying 1 mana and a card to kill them in an uncounterable way. Like I can lore ride it, but I can't like. I mean, I can like Flourishing Hope. Like there's answers to it. I'm not saying that like Scarlet's your next tier 0 ruler, that like, oh, I figured out the answer to Lumia Rachel, I did it, and showing it to you on stream. Here, one and all, everybody come get this Dust Girl list that just hoses Lumia Rachel. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that it has potential to do that. I know that JPK, when she got spoiled, like put up a list for her, but he A, didn't know what the New Frontiers ban list was going to be, B, had seen like 3 cards for her, so I doubt that that holds up now that he's seen everything. I might have to go back and take a look at that. No, I don't. But yeah, I'm very interested in this like dinosaur kind of control deck where, for the most part, I'm just using my dinosaurs to like deal 700 damage to something for 1 mana, and then eventually I'm going to have the like 6 mana that it costs to like play a Dino Rider, and I'm just gonna slam it down. It's like, the fuck are you gonna do about it? Probably kill it, but like if I get us down to a 0-sum game where neither of us have any cards in hand, then I'm in an advantage because my ruler's very broken. But like that's not really how I want to get the game down. I want to play it like a control deck. And then I think that her spell is really interesting, the deal 2,000 damage uncounterable if your ruler is Scarlet. I think that's a really cool win condition that we haven't, like, an unexplored realm of territory that we haven't seen in a long time in card design. And then her J-Ruler side's, like, obviously very good. I don't think it should be your focus of the deck at all. I don't think it's that good, but I think it's a very good plan B. Kind of like flipping Lumia. Like, Lumia is a ruler side-based deck. Like, you don't even really have to play the colors for her. I do think you have to play the colors for her because it's like a Charlotte type ability, except it's killing things. But like the J-Ruler side's not a bad backup here. Swiftness, Imperishable Precision, First Strike, and then untap when you kill something, like, that's pretty good for a control deck. The problem is that you have to have 0 cards. Like, if she didn't have to have 0 cards in hand to flip, and then she was like a reasonably costed flip, like 3 or 4 mana, or like, yeah, like Lunia costs 4 mana, if she cost 4 mana, like, I'd be fine with that. I would love to pay that. I feel like Scarlet would have been a lot better if she worked like Guild 2, where you have this high ruler cost, and then it gets reduced for, or like it's like black and X, where X is the number of cards in your hand, is like her judgment cost. I feel like that would have been really cool or good. But I feel like just 1 black, you have to have no cards in hand, is kind of playing into the null mechanic a little bit too much, because like her ruler side doesn't benefit off of the null mechanic. Like sure, I'm ditching cards to kill things, but I'm not really getting any other benefit out of null. And then like her J-Ruler side like doesn't get anything extra as long as you have no cards in hand. And I feel like that's like an unexplored territory that could have been taken with this card, and it would have been a lot better for it. But it didn't. It's not. So I think she's like good, but I don't think she's gonna like be able to go toe to toe with the top decks. But I've been wrong before, and this is one of those things that I might be wrong about. Not Shayla. Shayla's bad. Anyway, that's gonna be it for my set review here of the Time Spinning Witch. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm excited for. I think this video is going to be going up on the Friday before Grand Prix Montreal. So for the next week, I'm going to be like testing. But if you have any questions about anything in the video, or like you have a cool Scarlet Girl or like doll-based Shahrazad deck list you want to send me, or just any other deck list, any questions about the new format, I will answer to the best of my ability. For those of you asking like what a Lumia Rachel deck would look like, please understand that I am on a competitive team, and I am going to a Grand Prix in a week with my entire team, so my deck lists are a little bit private at the moment, but after that, be sure to check out the top 8 of that event, because I'm sure that one of us will top, and you'll be able to see what we were playing with, so looking forward to that. In the meantime, that's all from me.